David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. I always enjoy making new discoveries and learning about new companies. They might actually be newly formed companies, or they might have been around for a while but are new to me. Today, I have for you something from a company which hasn't been around for that long, but was new to me, and that is Tom's Studio. And the pen I have to show you is their model called the Studio Fountain Pen. What I am going to do today is go over the parts and features of this pen, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. With what is probably the most enjoyable nib I've tested out in quite some time now. Thanks go out to the good folks at Tom's Studio for providing this pen for review. Tom's Studio is based out of Dorset in the UK. It's in the south and is home to the Jurassic Coast. There is indeed a Tom behind the brand. That would be Tom Gear. Here he is with his wife Gemma. Tom began making dip pens out of resin and brass on an old engineering lathe from the 1960s. As his pens became more popular, he was able to leave his job as a graphic designer and begin manufacturing and making pens full-time back in 2020. I believe the actual manufacturing of the pens has been outsourced, as is necessary sometime as a small company grows, but Tom still has an active hand in the design and prototyping of all of the models. The company leans heavily into the calligraphy space, but also offers a couple of different fountain pens. So let's take a look at one. It arrives in this box. It has a nice graphic on the sleeve. The sleeve slides off. Now, this is something unique that I didn't notice at first. Now, typically sleeves like these are kind of disposable, but inside of this sleeve are the use and care guide. Now, this is a creative place to put that documentation, but it's almost too hidden. I just happened to get a glance at the inside when I was taking off the sleeve and noticed something was printed in there, but I could have easily not noticed at all. Maybe they could have put some indication on the outside that there was important information contained within. But I do like the creative use of real estate. Now, the Studio Fountain Pen is available in 6 different colors. There is the rose gold, black, ivy, lilac, sage, and mulberry. And the one I have for you today is the ivy. It arrives in this neat little plastic sleeve that is a bit unique, because once you take the pen out, it unfolds and has some more graphics and marketing information, rather than details on your specific pen, but I like it. But more importantly, we have the pen. This is the Tom's Studio Fountain Pen. It's made from metal. I believe it's an anodized aluminum. I don't believe it's brass. The anodization gives the exterior of the pen a very slight texture to it. It's a nice finish that has a bit of life to it. It's not just flat, if you know what I mean. Let's take a look at the parts and features of this pen, starting with the top of the cap. It's adorned with a solid metal finial and an indented top. Now, whenever I have a pen with an indented finial like this, I have a tendency to rub it, almost like a worry stone. Now, you can unscrew this rather easily. There's probably not a need to, but I wondered why it wasn't affixed with some adhesive or something like that. Not the biggest issue. This is a clipless design. Now, for this specific pen, I feel the clipless aesthetic really works. But you do need to be careful, because if you do set it down anywhere with a slope, it is going to roll around. The cap is a bit rounded. It immediately angles up to the thickest portion, which is about here, and then tapers down. There's no engraving or external branding on this pen. There is a very small step down from the cap to the barrel, and then the barrel tapers down at an even rate of decline, and at the end of the barrel, it is rounded. The cap twists off with a single rotation, and underneath we have a real highlight for this pen, which is a stainless steel number 6 nib stamped with the company name. This nib is available in a number of different options. There is fine, medium, and extra fine semi-flex. And then for an additional cost, there are several other options. There's a titanium flex, architect, cursive italic, ProFlex, and even a Japanese brush tip. The nib that I have on this specific pen is an Architect grind, and I have to say it's one of my favorite Architect grinds I've ever tested. I'll get more into details during the writing sample, but this nib is outstanding. And here's a look at the plastic feed. The section angles up until you reach a pair of small step-ups, one to the threads and the other to the remainder of the barrel. The section is metal. The anodized finish helps reduce the slipperiness. Even without a flare at the end or having the section be concave, I feel like I can maintain a decent grip on this section. The pen is long enough to use unposted. The cap does post, and it does post securely. Especially with this solid metal finial, I find that it does backweight the pen slightly, not a ton, but for me, it throws off the balance enough that I prefer to use this pen unposted. This is a cartridge converter pen. It uses standard international cartridges and a converter is provided. With the metal construction of this pen, eyedropping would not be recommended. The price for this pen on the Tom Studio website is $120. I'll put a link to their site in the notes below this video. I feel that's a reasonable enough price for what you receive with this pen. I don't feel there's anything wrong with the overall aesthetics of it, but I can't say the overall design thrilled me or really stood out. If there were a number of pens on a table at a show, this one wouldn't necessarily instinctively be the one I reached for. I will say, though, that many of the other Tom Studio products have a bit more creative design. This specific pen is just a little bit more toned down compared to some of their other offerings. But what isn't mid about this pen is the nib. I mentioned it up top, but the Architect grind is outstanding and a real pleasure to write with. Okay, now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and that writing sample. So here we have the Tom Studio fountain pen. I want to give you a closer look at that nib. Actually, here's a picture of it. You can really see here the Architect grind and how the writing surface is kind of that long angled surface. But in regard to some size comparisons, we have here a Lamy All-Star. And then here it is with a TWSBI Diamond 580 Iris. And here it is with a Diplomat Aero. And then in regard to some other pens, here it is with a Platinum 3776 Yamanaka. And here it is with a Montegrappa Elmo. And finally, here it is with a Faber-Castell Lume. In regard to uncapped comparisons, here it is with the Lume, then here it is with the 3776, and finally here it is with the Lamy All-Star. So here we go with the writing sample for the Tom's Studio. And this is called the Studio fountain pen. And this is, we'll call it an Architect grind, and that the ink that I'm using today to match the green of this pen is Diamine November Rain. This is what the ink looks like. It's a nice solid green, and then I like the kind of reddish sheen that it has to it as well. It looks very similar to the Guitar Lady Emerald, and then here it is with a little bit lighter Visconti green. This is what the bottles look like. Diamine is just a solid ink. The November Rain is part of a rock and roll series that was exclusive to a German retailer. And I think that you could find them on Amazon and other places right now, but they had a number of inks that were with a rock and roll theme and some really solid colors as well. Okay, here we go with the rest of the writing sample. This is an incredibly smooth nib. With You're not going to get a lot of flex out of this. In fact, it railroaded just a little bit there. But the key feature of this is it's going to have a narrow downstroke, but a thicker side stroke. And in regard to ink flow, it is on the generous side, even though this is a bit of a drier ink. And then in regard to some reverse writing, it is a little sharper, but it does lay down an extra fine line. And then in regard to some fast writing, the feed keeps up just fine. But it's an incredibly smooth nib, and you can see that it kind of adds a lot of effortless flair to your writing, and that's just kind of standard writing, and I really like it a lot. This is one of the better Architect nibs that I've tested. It makes me want to try some more of them. So here we have the Tom's Studio fountain pen. In the end, the pen itself really didn't stand out to me, but as I have kind of raved about, the nib is outstanding, which makes this well worth checking out. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.